Good morning. Today's Daf Yomi is Kesubos Daf Yud Tes Kesubos 19, and we're going to start on the bottom of Yud Ches Amabez. Back in the Mishnah, we had said if the witnesses said this is our signature, this is our ksav yad, this is our handwriting, therefore they're mekayim the contract. They're the ones who say that this is a valid contract, but they say one of three reasons why you shouldn't believe the contract. They say either anusim hayinu, it was done under duress, or they say ketanim hayinu, or they say we were children and therefore it's not a valid contract, or they say psuli eidus hayinu, or they say listen, we were disqualified to be witnesses. For Rashi gives two reasons, either because they were relatives or because they were gamblers. In any case, the Tanakam of the Mishnah, or the anonymous author of the Mishnah, says they're believed. And the reason that they're believed, as you'll see from the Gemara on today's daf, is because of the concept of Pasha Asar or Pasha Hiter. They're the ones who said it's a kosher signature, so they're the ones who could say yes, but the reason behind it was disqualified. And now we go to the bottom of the daf, on the bottom of Yud Ches Amabez, where the Gemara says Tana Rabbanan Ein Nemanin Leposla Divrei Rabbi Meir, that Rabbi Meir is on the position that we do not believe this person to disqualify the testimony, meaning to say we believe him to say it's a kosher signature, but then we don't believe them to disqualify it. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. Chacham say we do believe them to disqualify it. So Bishlam al Rabbanan, it makes sense according to the Rabbanan why we say we believe them to disqualify. Kitamayo, it makes sense. The Rabbanan Kitamayo Shapesha Asra Pesha Iter, as we explained. They're the ones who said it's okay in the first place, so therefore we're going to believe them when they say it's not okay. How Rabbi Meir, my time, what's the reason why Rabbi Meir believes them? It's their signatures, but yet also says does not believe them when they disqualify it. So Gemara is going to go through the three examples of the Mishnah: the disqualified witnesses, the minors, and also that we did it under duress. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir, my time of Bishlam of Psulia Edus. I understand why Rabbi Meir says we don't believe them when they say that the witnesses were disqualified. Why? Edus, because Malva Gufe Meikar Medak Dayakum, because the lender, he's not going to bring in people who are disqualified as witnesses to sign on his contract. He knows that that's going to disqualify. Why is he going to go through all this work, lending the money, writing a contract, and then put on it disqualified witnesses? So that's he's going to check them out and make sure that they're not disqualified. Ketanim Nami, also with respect to children. So since these witnesses have accepted the fact, that it's a valid signature, it's a valid contract, and the loan took place, we're not going to believe them that they signed it as children. Rish Lakish says on the top of 19a, Chazaka, we have a presumptive status. That the witnesses are not going to sign on a contract unless they're adults. Meaning, say either because the people will, the same concept as the psuli ages, they're not going to hire people or going to ask people to sign a document if they're disqualified, or else children know not to sign it. There are two different explanations. But my time, what's the reason people can't sign it? And we don't believe them if they said they signed it under duress. Amar Chisda Kasav Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir. So Rav Chisda says the reason is because Rabbi Meir is on the position that if witnesses said, if people said to the witnesses, sign it falsely, and otherwise I'll kill you, they have to allow themselves to be killed rather than signing it falsely. So we see from here in this case, they should not have signed it falsely. So they're therefore incriminating themselves. And we don't believe, and we have a concept, a person does not incriminate himself to become wicked. And so therefore, for this reason, we're not going to believe him when he says he signed it under duress. So I'm really Rava. Rava says, no, that I completely disagree with you, Rav Chisda. Do you really think that that a person is supposed to give up their life rather than sign a document falsely? If they would come in front of us to ask us, should we give up our life or sign falsely? We would have said, we would have said, sign it, don't let yourself be killed. There's only the big three that you have to give up your life for: idolatry, adultery, and murder. And now that they signed, we're going to say to them, why did you sign it? So therefore, Rava disagrees with Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says that it's not just the big three, but there's also, you have to give up your life rather than signing falsely. But Rava disagrees. And so therefore, what's the reasoning for Rebbe Meir? Why does Rebbe Meir say, in a case where they said we signed it under duress, that we don't believe them that it was signed under duress, and we say it's a valid testimony? Time in Rebbe Meir can Rav Huna Amarav. So the reasoning, says Rava, is because Rebbe Meir is consistent with the statement that Rav Huna Amarav taught. Amar Rav Huna Amarav, Modeh b'shtar shekasvu. Let's say a person admits that this contract was written. Once he admits that the contract was written, ain't sarach l'kaimo, then the lender does not need to be Mekayim the shtar. We have been discussing the idea that you need to have what's called kiyum shtar. That biblically speaking, a contract is sufficient. Rabbinically speaking, the witnesses need to be verified. But in this case, since the borrower admits that the loan took place, the lender does not need to verify it according to Rav Huna Amar Rav. We read the Rashi, then the lender doesn't need to verify the signatures, because once the borrower admits to the loan with the contract, the borrower is no longer believed to say I paid it. And in this case, we are not going to say apesha asar hu apesha hiter. Kivin shama kosher, because once the lender says it was kosher, once the borrower admits that it's kosher, the shtar has been ratified. Says Rashi, and once he claims he says I paid it, we don't believe him, because now it's in the hands of the lender. And Rebbe Meir Nami, when Rebbe Meir says they're not believed to disqualify, he's talking about a case where the borrower has admitted it, and he says, and so therefore he says we no longer need these witnesses, and so therefore, since the witnesses are not, they say it's their signatures, but we're not relying upon that. So now, when witnesses say we were disqualified, we don't believe them, because we're not relying upon their testimony to say it's a valid signature, because the borrower admitted it. So now let's analyze the statement. So he says, Rav Huna Marav says, if the borrower admits to it, you don't need to verify that the signatures anymore. When he said this in front of Rav Nachman, when Rav Huna said this in front of Rav Nachman in the name of Rav, Amar Rav Nachman, he says it's like you're like a robber here, meaning to say you say no. Either you say nobody's arguing with you, but you're adopting the position of Rebbe Meir, which is a minority position, but it's not the case. If you hold like Rebbe Meir, then a case where the borrower admits that you don't need to be Mekayim the shtar. You should have said the law is like Rebbe Meir, and you should have stated this as an anonymous statement or as just a straight halacha. And so he said, so Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, how do you hold? Even if the borrower admitted to the contract, when they come in front of a court, first we mekayim the contract, and then and then I'll basically enforce it. First, the contract has to be fulfilled. Rashi says, "Kachani rakil Omar, Malv Mamavim Shterosei and Lefanai, Vein Edim Imayim." This is what I say to the lenders who bring their contracts before me without the witnesses. I say to them, "Go and find your witnesses and be mekayim it." Because if this would not be the case, because if this were not the case, even if the borrower would say, "Yeah, I borrowed the money," you could also say, "I paid it." Same borrower said, "I borrowed," could say, "I paid it," but it's just Rav Huna Marav, Rabbi Meir, who says that no, that ain't tzarich l'kaimo. He says no, that once the borrower admits it, then you have a contract. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, HaOmer Shtar Mana who's this. So now we have other types of false documents. What's a Shtar Mana? A Shtar Mana is, it's almost like a pre-mortgage. He says, we want to make certain that I'll be able to borrow money from you one time in the future. So we write a contract that says I owe you $1 million because I trust you that when you're going to lend me the $1 million, that you're not going to make the claim for me until I actually come to borrow the $1 million. So it says Rabbi Marav, Omer Shar Mana, who's Eino Neman. If he says that, and says in the name of Rav that if he claims this was a Shtar Mana, we don't believe him. Versus the Kamar Man, if who claims? You aim at the Kamar, well, if you want to say the borrower is the one who's claiming it's a Shtar Mana, Pshita, Kol Kamina, of course, the borrower is going to say, yeah, it's not a valid contract, it's a Shtar Mana. We don't care. There's a contract against him. Now the Kamar Malva, well, if the lender says, yeah, it's just a Shtar Mana, what the law of bracha, he's trying to get out, he doesn't want you to pay him back, fine, let him be blessed. Now the Kamar Yedim, well, if the witnesses are the one who said it, here too, if they have their signatures, which can be ratified by comparing it to other signatures that they made, for sure we're not going to believe them because it's not a case of Peshas or Pesha Iker, because their signatures are validated from a third source. So, and if their signatures are not verifiable by an external source, then why aren't they believed when they say it was just a Shtar Mana? It's a Peshas or Pesha Yitir case. They're the ones who said it's a signature, and they're the ones who said it was a Shtar Mana. So the Gemara explains, no, Rava says, who's the one who said this? This was the borrower. So the first explanation is Rava Simon Bash. This is the first explanation. The first explanation is Rava. He says this is consistent with what Rav Huna said in the name of Rav. It's consistent with what Meir said, that even though the chiddush is, even though the borrower is the one who admitted to the loan, he's still so even though the borrower is the one who admitted to the loan, and so therefore you might have thought that a Pesha or a Pesha Heter. Nevertheless, the lender does not need to be Mekayim it. And so therefore, we're going to say, if this person says it's a Shtar Mana, we're not going to believe him. And he has to pay him back if the borrower says it, even though the borrower admitted it. Abaye gives a different answer. Abaye says, Om Davar Malva. No, who's the one who claims that it's a Shtar Mana? It's the lender. But why do we not say Tavo of Bracha in this case? Because the lender owes money to somebody else. So Reuven lent money to Shimon, but Reuven himself, so Shimon lent money to Reuven, but Shimon himself owes money to Levi. So we know that Gemara is going to say from the Shibuda of Rav Nasan, the principle is that since Reuven owes to Shimon and Shimon owes to Levi, Levi could collect straight from Reuven. So if Shimon is going to say, actually, Reuven doesn't owe me money, he's actually costing Levi the money. So it could go in Shechavla Acher with Dani Rebbe Nasan, the Tanya Rebbe Nasan, Omer Minayel, no Shebechavero Mona, Bechavero Bechavero. How do we know in a circumstance where you lend, where one person owes his friend $100 and his friend owes another friend 100? How do we know that in this case, Levi could say, I'm taking the money straight from Ruvain and giving it to me. I can just skip Shimon, Tamalomar, Vanasana, Asher, Ashamlo. So that's the second possibility. Why do we not believe a shtar amana, even though the lender is saying it? Because the lender, if he's getting out of the money, that if he's saying Reuben doesn't owe me money, well, he's really costing Levi the money. So therefore, we're not going to believe him. And the third case is Rav Ashi says, "All the company aid him." What we're talking about here is a scenario where the witnesses say that this was a shtar amana. And their signatures are not verifiable from another source. So if that's the case, why don't we say it's a shtar amana? Because so why don't we believe them? Like Rav Kahana taught, a person would not be allowed to leave the shtar mana in their household. You can't actually leave the shtar mana in your household. It's a sin because it's going to create fraud. Even it's create the possibility of fraud because you're writing basically a document that I owe you $1 million even before I owe you the $1 million. So the lender has this document which he could use for fraud. And we have a statement, Al tashkein bo'alecha avla. You're not allowed to leave an avla, a sin, something that could cause a sin in your house. That's what it says in Job. That's what it says in Job, chapter 11, verse 14. Va'amar Rav Sheshes prayed to Rav Idi, Shnami Nami to Rav Kahana. We also learn from this, we're on top of 19b. So Rav Sheshes prayed to Rav Idi says, we learned from what Rav Kahana said that you're not allowed to leave a shtar mana in your house. And Eidim Sha'amru. So therefore, the witnesses, we believe them when they say this was our signatures, but we don't believe them when they say it's a shtar mana because then they're making themselves into wicked people, and therefore we're not going to believe them. And so now we say we learn from this statement of Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana said this idea. Rav Kahana said that you're not allowed to leave the shtar mana in your household. Now that's a Eidim Sha'amru Amana Yudvarenu. That the witnesses who say that this was that our signatures were on a shtar mana, we don't believe them. My time. What's the reason we don't believe them? Keeping the avla since it's a sin, on the sin, the witnesses are not going to sign. And if they do sign, we're going to say, we don't believe you that you signed because we're going to say a person's not going to make themselves into a wicked person. So now the Gemara says, just like you can't leave a shtar mana in your household, you also can't leave a shtar parua b'sel pesa. So what's a shtar parua? Yeah, Reuben has a note that Shimon owes him $1 million. Shimon pays him back the $1 million, but Reuben keeps the money. Reuben keeps the contract. He's not allowed to keep that contract. That's called the shtar parua. Now, Shimon might have just said to him, why would Reuben still have the contract? Shimon would have just said, I don't care. You can keep the contract. But you're not allowed to do that. Because you're not allowed to leave a sin in your home. If there's a sin in your home, make it distant. That refers to shtar mana, v'shtar pasim. And it also refers to a shtar pasim. What is the shtar pasim? The shtar pasim is a shtar. This is a contract where basically one party writes to the other that he owes him money because he wants the person who has the note says, look how much money people owe me, look how wealthy I am. And establish credit. Other people think he's a good businessman. So it says in my Rav, they say in the name of Rav, what does it mean when it says you have to distance yourself from sin? This refers to a shtar mana and a shtar pasim. And what does it mean when it says do not dwell in your tent, let there not be a sin in your tent? What does that refer to? That refers to Zeshtar Parua. This refers to a paid off contract. So Mada Amar Parua, the one who says that when it says in the verse Avim Biyadecha, the one who says that one who says that the verse is trying to prohibit shtar perua, kol shkein shtar mana. For sure, he's going to prohibit the shtar mana. Umanda amar shtar mana, but one who says it refers to shtar mana, well, shtar perua, well, it's not prohibiting shtar perua. Why? Because there's a perfectly good reason why you should have a shtar perua in your house sometimes. Because sometimes the borrower, whose job it is to pay for the scribe, let's say he didn't pay for it, so the guy says, "You still owe me money for the writing of the scribe," and so therefore he'll leave it in his home, and so therefore that's the reason why, according to that position, why you could keep the contract around. In Bar Sefer Shena Muga, let's say you have a Torah scroll, at least a Torah scroll, or as Rashi says, Torah Nevi'im or Kesubos, that wasn't checked for mistakes. So therefore, it's almost a certainty it will have mistakes if you have a Torah scroll that wasn't checked. The Torah scroll, before you can use the Torah scroll, you have to check it so many times. I know when I write a Torah scroll, I give it to the scribe. First of all, I check it, but that's nothing. But then you give it to the sofer, to the bodek, to the magia, and they check it through a computer, often twice. And then they check it by a bodek. He checks every single letter, the magia, and fixes it. And when you write a new Torah scroll, you can have, even if you have like a small correction on every other page, that's still going to be over 100 mistakes. And so you're going to have a lot of mistakes before you can use the Torah scroll. So once you have a sefer she'einu muga, amar Rabbi Ami, ad lama yom mutar l'shahoso. Up until 30 days, you can leave it in your house. But from 30 days onward, also l'shahoso, you're not going to leave it in your house because it states, atashkein bo lecha avla. So if you can't have a Torah scroll with a mistake in your house, for sure you can't have tumah in your house. Something that's spiritually improper, you should be careful about having in your house. Amar Rabbi Nachman, Eidim she'amru. So Rabbi Nachman says, let's say the witnesses that said, Eidim she'amru, amana ayud varenu, that yeah, we signed it, but it was a shtar amana. And we're not going to believe him. But if they say muda ayud varenu, if they say, listen, yes, we signed the document, but he gave us a signal to sign it because he was under duress. We're still not going to believe it. So Mar Bar Avashi argues with Nachman. He says, if it was a shtar mana, yeah, we don't believe him, but muda yud varenu. But if it was muda, we're going to believe him. By time, a shtar mana, you're not supposed to write. So therefore, the witnesses, by signing it, are showing their mistake. But a shtar muda, he had no choice. He had to write it. And so therefore, there's a good reason why they signed on the shtar muda. And so therefore, we're going to believe him, says Rav Ashi, about a shtar muda. Nachman. So Rava asked the question from Nachman. But let's say the witnesses said, Tanaya yud varenu mahu muda v'amuna. So So if they said, yeah, we signed it, but it was on a condition, it means to say that the loan happened on the basis of a condition, and we don't know if the condition was fulfilled. So therefore, you shouldn't be able to collect the loan. So that's what it says. He says, not a loan, a field. He sold this field to him on a stipulation, on a condition, that he has to do X, Y, and Z. We didn't see that he fulfilled the stipulation. He says, no, he didn't fulfill the stipulation, and so therefore it's not a sale. So they want to say that the sale was a conditional sale. So what do we say under those circumstances? What's the reason when it comes to muda and amuna? What's the reason why we don't believe him? Because they're basically uprooting the whole contract. And we're not going to believe them according to Rav Nachman, because they're uprooting the contract. But in this case, he's also uprooting the contract. Or maybe the condition has nothing to do with the actual contract. It's just an extra thing. So Rav Nachman says, he says, yeah, I tell them, go fulfill your condition, and then it's a good judgment. meaning to say you have to fulfill the condition. It's separate from the signatures. Is these that they're testifying about another element, which is the conditional. So now we say, but what about the following case? Let's say one witness says there was a condition associated with it, and another witness says there was no conditional clause associated with the sale. So Rav Papa says, let's break it down. The two witnesses are both testifying about a contract. So they're both testifying about a very good contract. And now we have one witness saying it was a conditional. So now we have one person who's coming to uproot the two signatures. So it's 1 against 2. And one person cannot uproot the two signatures. So Papa would not allow one conditional witness to uproot the contract. Papa. So Maskif Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua, so Rav Huna, son of Rav Yeshua, challenges. It says if this is the case, I feel Nami, even if they both would come and uproot it, it should be not believed. But Rav Nachman had said that we do believe it. So Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua says even if both would come, we shouldn't believe it. Amrina, what do we say? The reason why we don't believe it if they both come is we say they're coming to uproot the signatures. Even though this is just one signature, we make her Suudakasi. We're saying he's coming to uproot the signature, and so therefore we're not going to believe him. And so therefore we are going to believe him. And so therefore we're saying he's coming to uproot his own signature. And since he's coming to uproot his own signature, we're going to believe him, therefore, and therefore, it's not going to be acceptable. Indeed, the halacha is like Rav Yeshua that one witness is also able to say Tanaya Yudvar, and our contract was conditional, and therefore the contract is not accepted until the seller will fulfill this aspect of the condition. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, Shnayim Chasumin al Shtar. Let's say you have two people who are signed on a contract. And so, and then the witnesses died, Ubau Shnayim and Ashuk. Then two other people came, Va'amru, and they said, Yadanu Sheksav Yadamhu. Say, yeah, we recognize that this is Reuven and Shimon's signatures on the contract, and it's not a forged. But they did it under duress. Or they were minors, or they did it when they were disqualifying witnesses. Then we're going to say we believe them to disqualify the contract. Why? Because they're the ones who ratified it, they're the ones who disqualified that. But if there were other witnesses that this was their signature, it means say if you could be Mikayim their signature from other sources, or you could compare the handwriting to another source, then Mishtar Shakar from another source that was already certified in the court. Then these two witnesses are not believed that the other two witnesses that it was their signature, but they did it under duress because they're not the ones who are certifying in the end. So the Gemara says, you mean to say we're going to accept, we're going to use it to collect money with, like a perfectly valid document? So even if the two witnesses are saying it was a nusim, we have 2 against 2. There are 2 groups of witnesses who are contradicting each other because the witnesses who were signed, it's as though they're saying that the testimony is good. And now we have the other witnesses who say that they are disqualified. So how are we going to listen to why are we listening to the second two and disqualify the contract? So therefore, therefore, how are we able to listen to the contract? So the Gemara says, so that we're going to say that just as relates to the laws of Hazama, if the two witnesses say about the second two witnesses, you're with us in a different place. So too about this, we're saying that even though they're just contradicting them, but we're saying that the two groups are against each other. And so therefore, we're not going to believe the second two groups more than the first two groups. By Azama, it's Exeris Akasa, we do believe the second groups. But we say, but also by Akasha, it's the beginning of Azama, and with respect to certain laws. And we're going to say that, so therefore, Kshem She'ima Zimin, just like you can only do Hazama if the original witnesses are there, so too you can only do this Hakasha, only do the second set of witnesses if the first witnesses are there. And we'll stop here. God willing, we will continue we'll repeat this at 8 a.m. and also tonight at 7:20. Everybody have a great day. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.